and then the second session. And the second session, we had an open Q&A session between the Impact 100 people who lead and manage that grant cycle. But we didn't want to end our education series without the opportunity for you all to talk to 3 nonprofits who had just gone through the process, because there's nothing better than hearing the experience from people who have had to go through that process. So we're very fortunate. We have 3 of our 4 grant recipients here today. We have Denise Govan from Life Learning Center. We have Rachel Hastings from Price Hill Will, and we have Melissa Triantafilo from City Gospel Mission. So what I'm going to do is maybe ask everyone, let me just start out if Denise, if you could just introduce yourself to the group and tell us a little bit about your organization.
Absolutely. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for this opportunity to share a little bit about our Impact 100 adventure. I am with Life Learning Center. I'm the Chief Operating Officer. I've been here for going on 15 years. And I oversee all the day-to-day operations at Life Learning Center. So Life Learning Center was created to help people that are struggling in either situational or generational poverty to reach their highest potential through our 12-week essential skills program. We have a care continuum that as individuals are going through our program, they can access things like glasses, dental assistance, bus passes, they can get food boxes, they can eat in our Pillars Cafe. And 98% of the folks that we serve struggle with substance use disorder. And 72% of the folks that are graduating currently or that are going through our program are securing employment. And so I'm excited to be here. I'm excited to talk about our project. And that's all for now.
Great. Thank you so much. Rachel, if you wouldn't mind just telling us a little bit about Price Hill Will.
Sure. Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Rachel Hastings. I'm the Executive Director here at Price Hill Will. We're the Community Development Corporation for all 3 Price Hill neighborhoods, so Lower East and West. And our overarching mission is to help residents improve the quality of life in their neighborhoods through projects that improve the civic, social, economic, and creative life of our community. So we do lots and lots of works. We have a youth orchestra program. We do a lot of real estate development. And in particular, our focus this year for our Impact 100 grant is our homesteading program, in which we make homeownership and equity building affordable to very low income families. So happy to answer any questions today or afterwards. Thanks.
Awesome. And Melissa, tell us a little bit about yourself and City Gospel Mission.
Hi, everyone. I'm Melissa. I am the Senior Director of Development at City Gospel Mission. And City Gospel Mission has been serving the Cincinnati community since 1924. We have a homeless shelter for people experiencing homelessness. We also offer recovery programs, job training, and we have 7 different youth programs. So we have quite a lot to offer. We've been around for a while. I am the person who wrote the grant. I'm a grant writer here at City Gospel Mission, so I'm happy to answer any questions about that side of things. And I'm happy to be here with you all today.
Great. Great to have you. So each of you had 3 very different funding requests, which I think would be great for the group to hear about. Denise, could you talk about your funding request and how is it that you conveyed what it is that you wanted to try to accomplish through the letter of intent in a way that explained it, but was concise and understandable to those of us who, wouldn't be as familiar with what you were doing?
Sure. So I'm making a note for myself. Our project is the Pillars Cafe project. And when we moved into this facility, we didn't have a full kitchen. We still don't have a full kitchen. So we needed industrial commercial kitchen equipment. And the key with the letter of intent is to be clear and crisp and concise, and really to the point, but in a way that demonstrates. So I think we put a little snippet of a soundbite from one of our candidates, really trying to infuse storytelling with facts in the letter of intent.
That's great. and I say three very different purposes, but Melissa, your funding request was not exactly the same, but somewhat in the same as a capital project. Maybe you can talk a little bit about your request and how you accomplished that.
Yes, our request was similar in the sense that it was focused on funding for a kitchen. We are working on a new building for our women's recovery program. It's called Having the Courage to Change. And so the request was to help purchase the equipment that we need in this new building for the kitchen. And I agree with everything that Denise said, that that clear and concise and the storytelling, all of those are three very important points, especially in the letter of intent. You have to be concise, but you want to give enough detail to connect the readers of the grants to the heart of what you're trying to accomplish, especially the individual piece. You know, really connecting them to the people that you're serving, not only the project, but how the project will impact the people served. So that's where I would try to keep your focus.
You know, Melissa, I think that is such a really important point that you brought up around not only talking about and being able to convey the project, but also connect us to those of you who you are trying to serve and what the impact and the influence and the change that is going to be made for them. And I think that is a really great point. You know, Rachel, I see you nodding your head. Do you have something to add to that?
But first of all, I certainly would agree with everything that Denise and Melissa were saying. I think in our case, so our request is for our homesteading program, where we acquire a vacant house, make sure that it meets building code, then sell it on a land contract that legal aid wrote to a very low income family. It's a little bit of a complicated project, just because we've kind of created our own model, because the current system to provide affordable housing for home ownership opportunities for low income families does not work for the families in our neighborhood. So we did spend some time obviously talking about the stories and how home ownership and equity building opportunities affect people's lives and change the lives of women and children in particular, which of course is near and dear to my heart. But also I think, trying to explain how our program is different than what other folks might be trying to do in Cincinnati. So I think that's really an important sort of takeaway, is like, what makes what you're doing special? How are you like really responding to the needs that you have identified with residents in your community, that is, and and working with them, like what the solution is, and you've kind of proven a new model, or you've really tried something out. So I think that what is unique and special, I think, is a really important thing to emphasize.
Oh, that's great. And I just want to remind everyone that the chat box is open if you want to drop a question in there, but feel free to come off the mic and just jump in too, So I know this is even though it's Zoom, we can handle kind of a big open conversation. So what kind of financial questions did you get during the LOI application process? Because I know that's on people's minds, about how much information do you need to have there, and am I going to have all the right information that they're going to ask me about?
So for the letter of intent process, I went back and tried to refresh my memory, because it's been a year ago. And we didn't get into a lot of detail. We had the detail because we had already submitted previously in previous years. But we just really tried to genericize and share enough that it would explain that the funds would be going for the kitchen. And then we also added in a small instruction segment to do some healthy eating courses. With a $100,000 request, it was easy to just kind of explain how that was going to be dedicated to two core areas without getting into major details that we did once we were invited back to submit the full proposal.
Melissa, do you have anything else to add to that from your standpoint in terms of the financial information? Were you ready for the financial information that was asked for on the LOI?
We were prepared because of our experience with other grant funders, I think. And so I agree, our situation was similar to Denise's, is that the kitchen equipment, we were able to list it out in enough detail that would show exactly how the funds would be used, but also, trying to keep it as straightforward and simple as possible, so that it doesn't get too much into the weeds, or oversharing things that don't need to be included. So I think that that's helpful to find that balance, enough detail to really tell the story and explain, but as concise as possible.
I know during one of the other sessions, there were some questions from all of you who are considering applying for an Impact 100 grant about the financials. And I was just wondering, is there anything else that you would like, any of you here have any other questions about the financial requirements to ask, if you have any? And this doesn't have to be the last time that we get a chance to talk about that. So
I do have a question.
great.
Okay, so were you, especially like with the kitchen things, were you very specific, like you already had this specific thing on order? Or did you give kind of like, this is the general cost of this specialty item? We could get it, somewhere between, I don't know, 5,000 and 10,000, or did you say, I need $10,000 for this specific item, even though I don't really know what it's going to specifically cost when I buy it?
So it was for the kitchen for Life Learning Center, it was more the latter, more genericized of what we did have some bids, but we didn't put that into the equation. We just basically backed into what we thought we'd need for overall equipment, because it's for multiple pieces of equipment, and what we would need to designate to the adult healthy cooking classes. Now, as you progress, as you're invited to pursue the rest of the process, and that's when you have to go into detail.
Great. Any other questions on the financials? Okay. So maybe what I'd ask is, I think many of you have, those of you who are considering putting in an application have probably gone through the LOI. Are there any questions about any of the other questions that you might have? So if not, maybe either Rachel or Melissa or Denise, when you were going through the LOI process, was there anything about any of the questions that you had to stop for a minute and think about? Was there anything that you had to really spend some time figuring out how you were going to give a response, and how did you handle that?
I think in my experience, the most challenging thing on any grant application is to distinguish your program or project from what other people might be doing, but also to be concise. I just always try to put myself in the footsteps of whoever is reading all these applications, right? There's a lot that folks are going through. So as efficiently as you possibly can to express, define your program and what you're working on, I think that's really key. And that is a big challenge for a lot of us who are really passionate about what we're doing. So I would just encourage you to always keep that in mind.
Right. Well, the first step in our process is the LOI process, but it's probably also good because we have three experienced grant recipients here to give you a little feel for what the rest of the process would look like. I know that we went through some of that in the first series of training, but I know, what did you see that was the big difference for you all between the LOI and the full grant application? And what do you think nonprofits ought to be prepared for? Because this is just the first step. So what were the big changes for you?
I can go ahead and jump in. So the big changes from progressing from the LOI to the full application, again, is just the detail. And the detail from the concept to your objectives and measurables, to your sustainability plan, and your overall budget. One of the things that we have done internally here a couple of years ago, and then we've recently just refreshed, is we have, like I would imagine most of you probably have to write a variety of grants throughout the budget year. And so we have some template language for specific projects already teed up, and then we step back and just refine that, update our outcomes, update the budget. That's been really helpful for us, but I think it's also important that one of the most challenging pieces is always going to be sustainability, because you have to be able to really think through what you're offering to deliver and how you are going to sustain it, and then put that to paper.
Melissa, how about you? What did you find to be some of the biggest changes or challenges or things you think be important to be ready for?
Yes, between the time of our LOI and the full application, the building project that we had started was happening during COVID when all of the price increases happened. So that was a challenge to have to go back to everyone involved and talk about how that budget had changed, and then represented accurately those changes in the budget for the full proposal. So just internally, that was a bit of a challenge on our end to kind of change gears there. And then also the full LOI is just a little bit, not the LOI, the full application is a bit more of a time investment. It's just a longer process, a longer application.
Right. And, we're really not through all the uncertainty around prices, material prices, energy prices. And it's a really uncertain time in so many ways. So so let me ask you another question, a follow-up question, Melissa. So the prices changed, and you needed to make some changes then from what you had originally submitted in the LOI to the grant application. How did you feel that went, and how did you feel the response was from Impact 100 about those changes?
Yes, we didn't run into any issues or problems in that communication between ourselves and Impact 100. They understood, and everyone understands that the price increases and the cost of construction are going up. But what ended up happening is that we just reduced the number of equipment items on the list in our budget. And so we're not able to purchase as many of the kitchen items. And then we looked for other funders to help fill that gap. And so we found a few other funders that could also make some purchases of kitchen items. And so it will work out in the end, but it was just a little hiccup in the middle. Right.
Rachel, I see you nodding your head in agreement. What do you have any other points to add?
Yeah, I would the full grant application is more time intensive, as Melissa said, and is as far as like cost increases, and we're doing housing, so talk about costs going insane, housing and acquisition and construction. So but we did find throughout the process that everybody that we interacted with at Impact 100 was very aware of the situation that we're all living in. Anybody who's turned on the radio or opened a newspaper, or I guess opened a website for a newspaper these days, is aware of the situation around housing, and the affordable housing crisis is very well known. So I think that was helpful to us, and that we didn't have to prove that the problem exists. We had to talk more specifically about our solution. But I was really impressed with the entire process, that everybody was very educated on the topic that we were talking about. So we didn't have to convince anybody about, helping families build equity. So that was really useful.
That's great. So maybe I'll just pause for a second. Any questions from the audience? It's a shy group today. Okay.
Lisa, we did have a question in the chat, and someone wasn't able to attend the initial training session 2 weeks ago, and we finally got the link to the recording of that training on our website. Mm-hmm. It's on our apply for a grant application process. It's right there with our with the slides where you can click on, and then the kind of mock-up of the letter of intent. So it's on that page. If you missed that training, you can certainly look at the slides or listen to my wonderful voice for an hour, and up to you.
Right. Oh, thanks, Rose, for that. Thanks for the reminder. That information is in the chat for those of you on the line, so you can go there and you can copy paste that. Well, great. So you all went through the LOI. We talked about the grant application process. Let's maybe go to the next step, which would be the site visit. Tell us a little bit about your experience with the site visit, from, how did Impact 100 approach it, and how did we handle it? How were you contacted? And then how did it feel from your end? Maybe Rachel, we can start with you.
Sure. So we got an email where it's saying that our development director actually got an email saying we were invited to the site visit. So we had a relatively short window to get that scheduled, which was a little bit of a challenge because, when you're trying to get that many people in the room at the same time, that's a challenge. We were happy to be able to do it in person this year, and after several years of remote. So that was really great. And honestly, we didn't, maybe I shouldn't be telling you this, but we didn't really prepare a lot for the site visit. I mean, we set up the tables and so forth, but like this, this is a program that we work on every day. I could talk for hours about it and answer any questions. So, we didn't feel like we needed to do extra prep for it, except for, we made sure that the right staff members on our team were in the room. And then just we talked a little bit about the program, answered a bunch of questions. I think we probably talked longer than we were supposed to because we all were just having kind of fun, just sort of pontificating about things. So, I found it a really kind of energizing event. So I guess I would say just don't overthink it. You're working on something that you really care deeply about, and just, share your excitement.
That's awesome, Rachel. What kinds of questions did you get from Impact? Generally, what kinds of things would we ask that we wouldn't have been able to see on an application?
I mean, we went really in depth about how our homesteading works, the program, and how how the money kind of cycles through the program. Because our goal is that, as families are paying off their land contract and owning their homes, that money gets recycled into the program. So that's complicated to explain on paper. We talked a lot about construction costs and, what we look for in houses. So really kind of the more nitty-gritty details about how our program actually works. And then we talked a lot about, as the women around the table started getting kind of excited about our program, we talked a lot about how can we get other communities to do this same thing? How can we share what we're doing here in Price Hill with others? And that remains a big goal for us. And so I see it as more people, drinking the Kool-Aid right now. We can get more folks who will help us on our long-term effort to get other folks to implement a similar program. So, we kind of started smaller, and then we got big as the conversation went on.
Yeah, and I wasn't on that site visit, but I can even tell just by how you're talking that you could have given, you get people, those of us who were there, our members who were there, a really good sense of not only what are you doing with your work, but how it could even be extended and have greater impact. So that's pretty cool. Melissa, how about you? How was the site visit for City Gospel Mission?
Yeah, it was great. I think we had about 12 women from Impact 100 that came to our women's facility where we have our recovery program. And that facility is right next door to where the new building is being built, the project that we presented to Impact 100. And so the site visits are always really special because they can actually get a feel for the space. They met several of the women who are currently in our program, and we got to just kind of have a casual conversation. And then, of course, our program director did a short presentation, but then we just kind of had a conversation after that. It was pretty laid back, and it was a lot of fun, actually. We laughed a lot. We had a good time. I think we all even cried. There was a moment where we were all just really touched, and so it really is a special thing to be able to meet in person again, especially after that period of time during COVID when we were all missing that. So yeah, it was a very good experience.
That's great. Denise, how about you? How was the site visit from your standpoint?
So very similar to Rachel and Melissa, it was a very good experience. We were contacted the same way via email and had some, time to get it on the schedule. We had the Emerald team, and little did I know at the time when we met the Emerald team that they would become our biggest cheerleaders. And in addition to doing their job that day of really understanding our proposal and our organizational mission, they truly have become friends for life. A couple of them have already reached out about how to stay connected. And I just, I thought that was really incredible to already have those relationships established from this process on top of getting the actual grant. So there were some tough questions asked, similar to what Rachel and Melissa said. We didn't have to really, I don't want to say we didn't have to prepare, but in the work of nonprofit, part of our job is always bringing people in so they can see what our mission is on a daily basis. So we did our normal tour and overview, and we had candidates that were in the building as they normally would be, and so just for the review team to come in and just really get a sense of on a granular level. Some of the questions we got asked were, what would happen if we didn't get the grant, which that personally threw me for a loop because I had been working on this for several years and was convinced that this was going to be our year. But we had to be really practical and realistic on what was going to be our plan B. There were more questions about outcomes because you put some information about outputs and outcomes and deliverables in your proposal, but not everything. And so that was a good opportunity to be able to talk about some more things that weren't covered in our proposal. But yeah, by the end, it was similar to what both Rachel and Melissa, we didn't have tears, but we had hugs. When you talk about such intimate life change and really helping people pull themselves up from their bootstraps and making a different life for themselves, it does get emotional. And so we had hugs and business cards exchanged, and it was a very good opportunity.
It's great. I think you each really helped make this site visit come to life. Frankly, even for those of us in Impact 100, who don't always really get to have the opportunity of hearing back and hearing the feedback like this. So that was awesome. Are there any questions yet? Just want to always pause to make sure that we're not just talking through you all.
This is Mary.
Yes, Mary.
It says St. Simon of Cyrene because that's where one of the hats I wear, but I'm also the director at Ticoon Farm. And one of the questions that I'm sort of hearing, and maybe I couldn't join you until a few minutes late, so I might have missed something that was mentioned in the introduction already. But it sounds to me like for some of these projects that the Impact 100 grant was part of a package of funding. Like the Impact 100 grant wasn't enough to, build the whole piece, but it funded part of it. Is that right? I'm just curious to hear how the Impact 100 grant has sort of been used in different kinds of contexts. Sometimes it's the whole thing, but it sounds like it could also be part of something bigger.
Right.
Yeah, for us, the Impact 100 grant is definitely leveraging other investments in our homesteading program. So, while this money might be going into one house, we're also working on other houses at the same time. And so I think it's important to talk about, where these specific funds would be invested, but also how you are doing other, using other investments and, putting other funds into the program itself, because that shows leverage and also shows, I think, towards some sustainability, right? Like, so when we got the question at the end of our site visit, like, what would you do if you don't get this money? It's like, well, we're just going to keep on trying to get other money from other people. That's the reality of, being in the nonprofit world, is that's your job on a really regular basis is, going out and trying to raise funds. So, if you really believe in what you're doing, that's not a hard thing to do. But again, for us, this was a portion of what we're doing with homesteading over the next couple of years.
No, that's great. Is that helpful, Mary?
Yes, as I've listened to people talk about the Impact 100 grant in the past, I've always had the sense that the hope is that the project will be fully funded by the Impact 100 grant. And I'm just
Oh.
aware that there's projects that are so much bigger that grant, $100,000 sounds like so much money, but at the end of the day, when you're talking about building programs and things, it's just like a drop in the bucket. And so I just was curious how Impact 100 feels about how do they understand how their piece of the contribution in terms of the bigger picture, the bigger projects.
That happens on many grant applications. And so it's something that we're used to. And to your point, $100,000 is a lot of money, but with some of the work that you all are doing, that would be only a portion of what it is that you're going to need to complete an entire project. So it's natural that you then explain what portion of the project you would use the Impact 100 funds for, but then give a sense for the reality is that we have these other pieces that are happening, and here's how we're pursuing funding for those other pieces. So then it gives us a sense of the whole picture. But you know, it's a wonderful experience for us to be able to have members who can contribute a small amount, but feel like we can have a much bigger impact than if we just took those small dollars ourselves and we're trying to find a way to make a difference. But the flip side of that is it's not that much. Oh, sorry, Rose, go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna say, so one of the questions on the application for the letter of intent, by the way, I'm Rose Palmieri, I'm the grant review coordinator for Impact 100, is, what's the total budget for the total project? And then, where is our $100,000 being spent? So we want to know specifically where our money's going to. So in the case of the Denise's Life Learning Center, I'm sorry, no, it was Melissa. We were funding a kitchen and these pieces of equipment, but it was part of a bigger budget. So and there is a place on the application that says, explain to us, where the other money's coming from. And that's the other. So if you need $1 million and we're going to fund 100,000 for these things, where are you getting the other $900,000? And because part of what we want to make sure is that you've got 3 years to spend the money. So you can't build in the case. I'm sorry, Melissa, I'm gonna use your example. You're not going to build the kitchen first and then the rest of the building. So most likely you got the rest of the building and here's the kitchen.
Yeah. Good. Thank you. That helps a lot.
Great. That's great.
So kind of off of that, so we want to build a permanent hub, but we haven't identified the space yet. We don't know if it's going to be, built from the ground up or if it's going to be a renovation. So the total project goals are a little bit, they've got question marks by it, let's just say, but we have identified some funding sources. But if we're sort of clear on what part we're asking you guys to pay for, is that kind of enough for right now? And then we still have to work out some of those things down the line.
Well, and I noticed we also have Kathy Thornton, who is our president, this year's president, who have joined. And Kathy has years of experience, as does Rose, as does Janet Collins, who's got a pretty significant leadership role on the Impact 100 board from a nonprofit cluster perspective. So was just wondering maybe if the three of you could comment on that.
Yeah, you have 3 years to spend the money. So if you may be too early, and I have to be careful. I can't tell you what to do. You've got to decide what's right for you. But you've got 3 years to spend the money. If you're not sure where exactly the long-term plan is, it might be too early for you to ask for the money. But then again, it maybe not. I don't know. I don't know enough about your project, nor do I want to at this point. So, so that that's a consideration.
I would just echo. Hi, I'm Kathy. I would just echo what Rose said. If you think about how the grant review teams look at a project, if things are a little bit fuzzy, I think they're going to have a hard time picturing what it might all be about. So you have some time to think about it and to know whether or not by the time you submit something, whether it would work or not. But
yeah, and that's why Because we're kind of we're afraid if we wait a year, it's going to be too late. Because we're hoping that you guys can help with some sort of like the pre-development funding. So,
And
Well,
again,
and-
if you're specific about that,
yeah,
and you've got the budget for the, whatever, estimates of the cost, and you can
Yeah.
articulate that, I mean, that's legitimate.
okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Rose, I thought that was really helpful. So if there's pre-development work, even in a capital project, there's usually pre-project spend too. So you don't have to have the entire full project figured out. But as Kathy and Rose said, it's helpful for us to be able to understand what portion that we're going to fund. And if we can't do that, then it's going to be difficult for us to see how we can have an impact. So
Okay,
does that
thank
help,
you.
Colleen? Good.
Yeah, thank you.
Anyone else have any questions? We're only about halfway through the grant cycle, so we got a couple more things to talk about here with everyone. So after the site visit, and then choices around finalists, I know there was a lot coming at you as a finalist. There was a lot of information to be pulled together. Hopefully, some of which you had, probably some of which you didn't have. And we also did videotaping of your presentations. So maybe you can talk a little bit about that videotaping process and how it went and what was good. And I'm going to just throw it out for you. What was good about it, and any things, frankly, that you think we could do better, because one of the things that we always want to do is continuous improvement. So anytime we have an opportunity to talk to the nonprofit community, we want to make sure that we're also listening to.
So for the video portion, we each were assigned a coach and a pitch coach. I think that's what they were called, but that was so helpful. And it really allowed us, I think we met with our coach like 3 or 4 times. And, Rachel has shared this and Melissa has shared this. The folks that are writing these proposals, we're all pretty passionate in what we do. So if we're not careful, we can get windy, we can get all over the place. So we have a small amount of time to make the ask in a way that is pulling on heartstrings of the participants to make them want to connect and ultimately choose our organization. So I can't say enough about the coaching opportunity. And then the actual video day. So Laura and I'm sorry she can't be here. She's actually, I have to joke and say, she's in the detention center. She's doing a project in Kenton County Detention Center. I said something earlier. I'm like, well, Laura's in jail right now, but she'll be back. And people were like, because I forget what I'm saying and I don't even think about it. But anyway, we complement each other really well. So we actually had fun doing it. Some people are not comfortable in front of video. You probably get a sense that I like to talk. And so I really enjoy this kind of thing. I've been here the longest. I'm really passionate about what we do as well. So the video day, like Laura and I were all excited, we're driving to the session, and it was a really nice studio in Bellevue. And there were some Impact 100 women. I think the other thing that's board members present that day that is really important for all of you to know up front is there is not a more passionate and caring group of partners than the Impact 100 board members you'll meet along the way. Because even if you do like to speak and present, you're still a little nervous. And Laura and I are looking out in the audience of 15, 20 board members that were there the day we videoed, and they were just so supportive and smiling and just trying to keep our focus on what we're trying to address and help us not be nervous. And I thought the whole process was very fun and the timing was well planned, and there was lots of communication about what to expect, and all that was very spot on.
Awesome.
So my preferred method of talking is just bullet points. I do not like to write out kind of like a speech sort of ahead of time. So that was a challenge. I mean, we certainly had the help from the pitch trainers, chiefs, and counselors. But it was, again, that's not my comfort zone. So there was a little bit of a like struggle just because, again, I'm not used to doing it like that. But it was extremely helpful because, and Lisa knows this, and I think Portia, you were there too. Like when I practiced my speech like 1,000 times in front of my laptop at home, and it has to be less than 5 minutes. And I was like, 450, I was like always under 5 minutes. And then when I got there and in front of the cameras, it was like 5 minutes and 40 seconds because I hadn't accounted for at home, like you're just looking at your screen. Whereas in person, I was like looking down at my papers and looking back up because I did have a speech written out, which is, again, not my MO. So then it was like, oh my gosh, now I have to like cut on the spot. It was stressful. And it was a lot harder than I expected it to be because I could talk to anybody off the cuff, but like kind of reading pre-written words is more of a challenge for me. So it was a really good learning opportunity. I think I told everybody in the room, like, I did not expect this to be so hard. I kind of underestimated how stressful it would be for me. So just keep that in mind. Again, we all have different strengths and we all have different sort of ways that we prefer to present and talk and so forth. So if this is not your comfort zone, make sure that you, are prepared so that you can, deal with it elegantly if possible. And also I think the other reality is that, like, despite the fact that I found it stressful, everybody was super supportive. People in the room heard me say the same things like 3 times and they were still smiling. So, which I thought was really amazing because who wants to hear someone say the same thing 3 times in a row in the course of an hour? So again, to kind of echo what Denise said about a really supportive group of folks, like if you're going to have to go out there and do something that's not in your comfort zone, these are the folks to do it with.
That's great. And Melissa, I can't remember, were you there with Lucreta?
I was not there on the day of the speech, but our organization is kind of an example of how we tag teamed on this Impact 100 project. So I did all the writing, of course, in collaboration with our project director, Lucreta, and speaking closely with her about the project. But then Lucreta jumped in and did the public speaking portion of the Impact 100 process. That's where her strengths are, and mine definitely are not. And so, but what Lucreta told me about the process, though, is that she really appreciated the coaching.
Okay, go ahead, Melissa.
That she really appreciated the coaching experience. So even though she had years and years of public speaking experience and felt very comfortable around that she still learned some new things from the coach that she worked with through Impact 100, the public speaking coach. So she was really impressed and appreciative of that process.
Great, it's great to hear. And I guess then just kind of moving on to the annual award celebration. Tell us a little bit about the annual award celebration. And maybe, yes, what was your experience like with that? And the fact that we did not ask you to do a live presentation, but in fact had the bulk of our membership make their choices in advance through being able to view the videos. Then I was just curious how you felt about that as part of the annual award celebration.
So I had the opportunity I've attended the annual award celebration for several years, and I was always somebody sitting watching others that were finalists and admiring how much confidence they had to pitch their project live in front of everyone. And even though I do like to talk and present in front of people, I did not envy the thought of that. Like, I knew someday hopefully we'd make it to the finalists, but I thought, oh my gosh, if I have to get up in front of everybody the night of, like, what's going to stop me from getting emotional? So I was so excited that we were able to do the video ahead of time. I think that night for all of us that were finalists, it was very professional. We all had our kind of support there from our organization and the community, and it was, it just allowed us all to kind of really enjoy the moment. I felt like we won the lottery that night, so we were all super, super excited. And to not have the stress of worrying about what you were going to say and if there was something in your teeth or, all of that, and just being able to be enjoying in the moment was really, it was was great. So my only regret is I forgot I was going to bring the spoon, which is right here. So this is the spoon we use to open our broken confection oven that we're going to get fixed. And I was going to hold it up on stage if we won, and I forgot it. I was so mad, and you can never relive that moment, but I figure somehow we're going to incorporate this. I might make it into a bracelet or something. We'll just see. So
That's great. So I don't know, Melissa or Rachel, if you had any other thoughts.
Sure. Yeah, I very much appreciated not having to present live that night, especially, with a speech written out. I actually got to eat, which, normally when you go to events, you never get a chance to eat. So that was really nice. Again, board members and staff at our table was really lovely. And, I was so amazed when I walked around the room, like before the awards were announced, like how many folks I knew in the room that I did not expect. I mean, obviously I knew the folks on our panel, but it's like other folks in the sort of nonprofit and community development world. And that was really lovely. Again, just still seeing people in person is so great after so long not seeing, but I was really thrilled at like how many folks were there. And I saw, one of our homesteading families was there. I mean, it was just really, which I didn't know she was going to run into her. So it was really, really lovely. And I also, Denise and I talked about this afterwards because we've known each other for a long time. Like I almost passed out when they said that we had won. Like I thought I was going to like pass out. So, because honestly, like there is so much, it is a long process, right? And you put so much into it. So it was really just like an amazing, wonderful news that I honestly was not expecting. So yeah, it was, and then for the next week, everybody that I ran into was congratulating me. Like the word gets out very quickly, right? So that was also very lovely to see, like, again, how many folks are really paying attention to Impact 100 across the community, and how many folks really kind of honor and respect the work that Impact 100 does with the organization. So it was nice to see that the sort of like ripple effects of that great night.
Hey, Lisa, if you remember, one of the finalists at the taping had a last-minute substitution.
Yes.
So the original speaker couldn't make it, got ill or something, and literally another staff member showed up with the printed speech. And I think he had read it maybe once or twice, obviously. But to Rachel's point about not liking to write things out, if God forbid something had happened to you, someone would have had to substitute for you and be able to read your speech. So that's another advantage to having it written out.
Oh, that's great. That's great to hear. So, we talked a lot about the entire process, right? But if you think back on it, what were the most challenging aspects of the whole process? And what questions do you wish you had answers to before you went into the process? And then maybe on the flip side, if you can, say a little bit about, what was the most rewarding part of going through the process besides obviously becoming grant recipients? Maybe Melissa, how about any thoughts from you?
Yes, definitely. One of the most rewarding pieces of this is just meeting the people from the Impact 100 group, the women who care so much about our community and the people who live here. That is really rewarding. We've already had a few women who have really stepped up as like champions for our women's program, and they're calling and they're asking, how can we help? How can we volunteer? So that piece of it has just been really, really rewarding to see that connection, those connections that we've made, those deeper connections. I'm sorry, I forgot the first part of the question.
Well, anything that's challenging, or anything that you wish was different, or any questions that you wish you had known before you went into the process.
Oh, I see. Yes, this is our second Impact 100 award. I believe it was 4 years ago that we also won an award for a different project. And one thing that is unique about Impact 100, which can be two sides of the same coin, in one sense, all that support and going the extra mile, and the people who come around us and want to get involved is amazing and rewarding, and we love it. But it also requires a lot more time and effort than most of the other funding sources that we pursue. So the process for Impact 100 is it's very involved and lengthy. And Impact 100 is not an organization that just gives you money and walks away. They very much want to be involved, which is a great thing, but just keep that in mind as you're preparing as an organization to apply, that you really do need to have the people and resources to come around this funding process. And then also after you're awarded as well, there's also a lot involved on the back end of it with the reporting and the engaging with the groups of women that want to come and volunteer, which is all good stuff. You just have to make sure that you're ready and willing to do those things.
I don't know, Rachel, do you have any thoughts from your perspective?
I don't know if Denise, if you had your finger on your unmute buttons. It's okay.
I was waiting too.
We have, Price Hill Will, since we're a community development corporation, we have lots of different programs and projects. So we also, similar to City Gospel Mission, were a previous Impact 100 award winner many years ago for our My Cincinnati Youth Orchestra. And then we have, we kind of waited for a couple of years, and then we're able to apply again. So the process has evolved over time as our organization has evolved, right? So I think that sort of growth opportunity, but then also there are different, I think this is helpful for folks to know, there are different sort of like groups of women making the decisions on different aspects of the work. And it was always a little hard for us, like with our youth orchestra, it very, neatly fits into, our youth and arts, but for homesteading, we were a little unsure like which team it would fall under. So that was, a little, it wasn't as clear to us. So it's just helpful to know that there are different interest groups at Impact 100. And then I think the other thing is, right, Melissa said, these, you don't just get money and then you just don't hear from folks, right? This is a long-term relationship and process. And so it is, it does require staff time and energy to kind of, build that relationship. But I think, again, what you get out of it in the end is very rewarding. But it's hard. I think it might be a challenge for a very, very small organization to really, be able to keep up with all of the commitment and requirements and so forth.
Denise, how about you?
Yes, my clicker was stuck. Rachel's right. I'm like, what is happening? Okay, so for us, very similar to points that Rachel and Melissa both made about just grant making process in general, I would say for Impact 100, this is not a typical grant making process. It is more of a commitment to long-term relationships, because as you're going through the process, the grant writing process, there's all types of learning opportunities throughout. Like, we didn't just write the grant. We've actually done this now for several years. We really try to leverage all the different opportunities within Impact 100. Like when there's learning sessions, I went to a La Soup open house over the summer, and oh my gosh, I just couldn't believe, number one, a project that was funded, a previous grantee, and then meeting other women on the Impact 100 board. And this year, being a finalist after, PS, might have applied for several years in a row, like 9, but I was really excited that if it does take you a couple of years, that's okay. That just means you have to get it refined. And so we finally got what, our project refined. And when we had meet the finalists, which was, I guess, in the summertime after the finalists, well, that was the revealing of I think from 20 to the top 6 finalists. That was a great opportunity. First of all, Rachel and I haven't seen each other in like 4 years. So that was super cool, because we had worked together for like 20 years ago and in each other's backyards to not seeing each other. And seeing her as a finalist was super cool. And then just meeting all of the other community members and Impact 100 members that wanted to just find out who's progressed this year was a great opportunity. So The whole process itself, I can't stress enough that it's a very committed group of women who really thought through this process. You all have gotten this down to an art. I'm not just saying this because we're a project winner. Like, I've written a lot of grants and participated in a lot of initiatives and projects over the past 30 years. And this was definitely by far one of the most refined. So, and I had gone to some of the Impact 100 sessions over the years on the grant process and the LOI process. And it's been pretty awesome to see how everything has just continued to grow, and now you all are funding 4 projects, and so it's just been good.
So,
I'm gonna, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. No, go ahead, Rachel.
I was going to say add one thing that I think that it was has really been made evident to me over the last couple of years, is that part of the I guess sort of promotional materials and marketing for the Impact 100 opportunity is that even if you are not a finalist, you might still get some, funding or help or connections or something. And honestly, I was like, okay, that's a nice thing to say, but does that actually happen? And honestly, I'm telling the truth, like, that has actually happened. I mean, not only the relationships, which are amazing, because these are very connected women across the region who can help make introductions, et cetera, for you, which is amazing. But also, like, we've also gotten donations from Impact 100 participants who really liked our projects. Some, this last one that got funded, but a previous one that did not get funded. So, it really is worth your time to, kind of build those relationships and go in like openly and honestly about what you want to do. And I think you'll find a very welcoming group of folks who want to help you be successful, which is not always the case in other grant competitions.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify, Rachel referenced our process. So as an applicant, you identify one of 5 focus areas: health and wellness, education, family, environment, preservation, recreation, and culture. And it's up to you. And then we have 5 grant review teams that are made up of our members, led by one of our board members. And it's a different group of women every year, because a lot of times I'll sign up for a committee because it's the time of day and day of the week that I'm available. So it doesn't matter if it's culture or education or whatever. So it's that committee then that reads your letter of intent. It's that committee that decides whether or not they want you to go forward with a grant application, and they carry it through to site visit and nomination for finalists. But it may be a different group of women every year. So I just wanted to clarify that. I also wanted to say before we leave, December 15th at noon is our deadline.
Yeah.
Eastern time.
Eastern time, right? That's a good reminder, Rose. Before we close, any other questions top of mind from anyone in the audience? Okay, well,
one final comment. Somebody commented that it was they received a phone call to do the site visit. You always received an email telling you to apply for a grant. So it's the contact information you put in that letter of intent that we use to contact you throughout the process. For some reason, and people change jobs, people go on maternity leaves or other kinds of leaves. If that changes, please please just send an email to grants@impact100.org, and we'll change that in your application so that the committee members can contact the right person.
Great. Well, look, thank you all the 2023 potential grant applicants for joining us today. And I want to give a special shout out to Denise, Melissa, and Rachel for taking their time to kind of share their experiences with us. Thank you all. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Happy Thanksgiving if I don't see you all.
Happy Thanksgiving, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Take care.